salieron.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. ¿Cómo están hoy en esta maravillosa Cartagena? Es un placer poder compartir este espacio, volver a sentir esta tierra maravillosa. Yo he estado un tiempo fuera de Colombia, estaba en Nueva York, llegué anoche, y cuando uno vive el país, siente el país, como yo lo he sentido, pues regresar siempre es un alivio, pero sobre todo es un gran compromiso. Yo soy Jineth Bedoya, llevo 18 años ejerciendo el periodismo en este hermoso país, y hoy tengo el honor de sentarme al lado de una mujer que inspira mucho, sobre todo porque es muy joven, pero ha empezado a batallar y ha empezado a abrir ese camino que muchas mujeres en el mundo estamos abriendo, que es el de hablar, el de denunciar, el de visibilizar. Laura Bates, una periodista británica, inició este camino de activismo, este camino de apoyar a otras mujeres luego de una experiencia difícil que la llevó a eso que hace hoy en día. Primero, convertirse en periodista, y segundo, convertirse en activista, pero sobre todo el empezar a respaldar a muchas mujeres que siempre tienen miedo de hablar o que no saben cómo poder abrir el camino para ayudar a otras mujeres, y ha sido maravilloso encontrar herramientas tan fundamentales, tan básicas, pero que pueden cambiar el mundo, como son las redes sociales. Y lo que primero que quiero preguntarle a Laura para empezar esta conversación es ¿por qué? ¿Por qué inició esto? ¿Qué fue lo que pasó? ¿Cuál fue el detonante para que te encontraras con el periodismo, pero sobre todo para que descubrieras que dentro de ti había una gran activista? Bienvenida a Colombia, bienvenida a Cartagena, y gracias.
Is this any better? Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honour to be here. I'm very grateful to the festival for having me, and also it's a huge honour to share the stage with you. I think the answer to the question of why is that it very much came out of a building up of incidents. There was no single event. It was much more the sense that this was something that's happened every day. And for me personally, I had about 2 weeks during which there were a lot of different incidents, and they were relatively minor incidents. So being followed home off the bus by a man who was aggressively sexually propositioning me, wouldn't take no for an answer, followed me to my front door, knew where I lived. Being on the bus late at night on the way home on the phone to my mum, and having a man start to grope his way up my legs and towards my crotch. And I stood up on that bus, and because I was on the phone to my mum, I said out loud what was happening. I said, I'm on the bus, this man's just groped me. And everybody on that bus heard, and everybody looked away. So it made me realise suddenly how normal and acceptable this was. But even more so, people were looking at me as if I'd done something wrong. And there was a sense of shame and embarrassment about having said anything. Nobody was looking at him like that. And then there were several other incidents which involved sort of people shouting at me in the street and that kind of thing. And the thing that really hit me about these incidents was that if it hadn't all happened within the space of a week, any one of them on their own I wouldn't have thought twice about, because it was just normal, because it was just part of being a woman. And it made me start to talk to other women, and that, I think, is what made me an activist, because I thought that perhaps a few other women would have stories to tell me. I thought that they'd have one or two experiences to share. And instead, it was every woman I spoke to. And it was on my way to meet you today, this just happened. Yesterday, this happened. I've been sexually assaulted this many times. In my workplace, the men go to strip clubs at lunchtime, and when women are coming in to be interviewed for new jobs, they hold up their pictures and they rate them out of 10 before they come in. And it was so many of these stories, and often some of them were very minor, but they were also very serious stories. And just like me, none of them told their stories to anyone. It was silence. It was so much a sense of normal and something that was invisible. And when I tried to speak up about the problem, people told me, no, sexism doesn't exist. Women are equal now, there is no problem. And I think that was what made me an activist. It was the enormous sense of frustration that so many women were living these experiences every day of their lives, and yet society refused to acknowledge that there was even a problem. That was what I wanted to address, I think.
Y precisamente cuando te encuentras de frente con ese problema, ser acosado o acosada sexualmente creo que es de las peores cosas que pueden pasar, porque es violar directamente la intimidad. Y empiezas a buscar la fórmula de cómo puedo ponerle voz a esas otras mujeres que les ha ocurrido lo mismo que a mí. ¿Por qué te decides por sexismo diario? ¿Por qué decides tratar de consolidar un proyecto que para muchos puede ser simplemente una red de amigos o un encuentro diario de un grupo muy pequeño, pero que hoy en día ha tenido un impacto grandísimo no solamente en Reino Unido, sino en otros lugares del mundo? ¿Cómo nace ese espacio de sexismo diario?
Well, it started because very simply I wanted other people to have the experience I'd had of hearing those stories together, because I thought that was a very important way to overcome the argument that these are one-off incidents, that you have the wrong impression, that you're making a fuss about nothing. It was meant to be a compliment. You need a sense of humour. And also to combat the idea that when we talk about sexism and what women are facing, very wrongly people often think we're just talking about the odd wolf whistle or a sexist joke. I wanted people to have that experience I had of hearing all these women's stories in their own words, which is so powerful, and recognising, first of all, these things are serious. These women are being assaulted on a daily basis. And secondly, this is enormous. You can't ignore these stories when you see them all together. So many women were being dismissed when they spoke out alone, but if thousands of these stories are in one place, then it makes it much more difficult to dismiss the problem. So I started a website because I felt that that was one of the easiest ways to crowdsource those stories. I felt that it would create a kind of barrier of anonymity so that women could share their stories and people could hear the stories, but women didn't necessarily have to go through the experience of personally being the one to come forward and be connected to that story, if you like. And I thought that perhaps 60 or 70 people would add their stories and share what had happened to them. I didn't have any funding or any way of advertising the project, so I really thought it would be a very small thing. But what happened, I think, was that no one had been talking about this, and so it was very cathartic, and there was an absolute outpouring. And within 3 years, we've now collected nearly 90,000 testimonies from people all over the world. And it's been something that has become something much bigger than I ever imagined, I think, because of the real power of those women's voices and the fact that they've been joined by women from all over the world. So we have stories from women we have 18 different branches of the website now in countries around the world, but we also have stories from women of different backgrounds, different races, disabled women, non-disabled women, women who are employed and unemployed, religious and non-religious. I think there's a sense of universality that's very powerful.
Te habré tocado algo muy importante, y es que en Colombia creemos, o en América Latina se cree, que el tema de violencia sexual está más acentuado en nuestros países